in The Observer. We are, of course, looking ahead to the World Cup this summer. Or, Mark Ogden, are we looking forward to a World Cup this summer? Paul Hayward in The Observer says a World Cup boycott has to be a live threat all the way up to next June. The creeping assertion that the US, with its high visa walls, militarised immigration policing and adventurism abroad, is no place for a football team or its fans to be. The recurring point is that a World Cup boycott would be small beer compared with the craziness all around, which is not to say it should not happen. It's too soon to know what the world would look like in June.
I think more likely is that fans will almost vote with their feet to a degree, and the fans simply won't go in the numbers that FIFA and the USA and Mexico and Canada would expect. And I think that was actually already a live issue before the recent sort of political issues with Greenland and the European NATO issue with Trump, because A, the ticket prices are so expensive, getting there so hard with travel. I think the stadiums are so big, I think it's quite possible that a lot of people, certainly, for example, there's a piece in the Telegraph by Jeremy Wilson, my colleague, writing about how in Denmark, you mentioned Denmark, the USA is obviously not very popular right now, and a lot of fans might just not want to go. Like, it just might just not go, and that doesn't affect the matches taking place, but it affects the spectacle and the competition. And there are other various issues going on. Also, Jeremy, in that piece, he mentions that an immigration policy in America that is expected to exclude fans from travelling from 4 of the qualified countries. So if that's the case, fans from Senegal, for example, literally can't go. They're excluded from going. The team can go, the team get exemptions, but the fans can't go.
German EFA Vice President Oke Gottlich just dropped a bombshell that's sending shockwaves through FIFA headquarters. The time has come, he said, to seriously consider boycotting the 2026 World Cup. This isn't some fringe political theater, folks. Trump's threats to acquire Greenland and slap tariffs on European allies have turned what should be football's greatest celebration into a geopolitical hostage situation. Germany has precedent here. They covered their mouths in Qatar. They led Olympic boycotts in 1980. The unthinkable is actually happening. FIFA's $100 billion tournament is fracturing along NATO alliance lines, and Gianni Infantino's Peace Prize for Trump is looking more desperate by the hour. The German revolt and European domino effect. Let's be clear about what's happening here. Gottlich isn't just some random official shooting his mouth off. He's a DFB vice president, and his statement represents official policy discussions within German football's governing body. When he references the 1980 Olympic boycotts and says the potential threat is greater now than it was then, he's not engaging in hyperbole. He's drawing a direct line from Trump's aggressive foreign policy to Germany's willingness to sacrifice the World Cup to make a point. The dominoes are already starting to fall. Denmark will be first to follow Germany's lead, and honestly, how could they not? Trump is literally threatening to annex their territory. The Danish FA is already saying they're aware of the current sensitive situation. That's diplomatic speak for, we're watching Germany very closely. Sky Sports and TalkSport coverage shows UK media taking this boycott threat seriously as a credible scenario, not just political posturing. France is signaling reluctance while other European powers watch Germany's lead. This is exactly how the 1980 Olympic boycotts played out. One major power takes a stand, others follow, and suddenly you have a mass exodus that destroys the entire event. The historical precedent is undeniable. Major sporting events can and do collapse over geopolitical tensions. Here's FIFA's nightmare scenario. They could lose 12 of the 22 World Cup winners: Spain, Italy, England, France, Germany. These aren't just any countries, folks. These are the football powerhouses that drive global viewership and sponsorship deals. Without European teams, tournament broadcast value would crater. Sponsors would demand refunds. The entire economic model collapses. Think about what this means practically. Germany has some of the most passionate football fans in the world. Their matches consistently draw massive television audiences. Losing Germany alone would be devastating. But if they trigger a European exodus, we're talking about the complete destruction of the tournament's commercial viability. Advertisers didn't pay premium rates to reach audiences watching Morocco versus New Zealand. They paid for Germany versus Brazil, England versus Argentina. The financial implications are staggering. FIFA projected record revenues from this tournament. Corporate sponsors like Coca-Cola, Visa, and McDonald's signed deals worth hundreds of millions specifically because they expected European participation. If half the traditional football powers walk away, these companies will have legitimate grounds to terminate their agreements. We're not just talking about empty seats in stadiums. We're talking about the complete financial implosion of the most lucrative sporting event on the planet. But here's what makes this different from previous boycott threats. The Qatar controversy was about human rights and working conditions. Important issues, but abstract for most fans. This is about Trump directly threatening European territory and imposing economic punishment on NATO allies. It's personal in a way Qatar never was. European governments aren't just dealing with moral objections to a host country. They're dealing with direct threats to their sovereignty. The irony is perfect. Trump wanted this World Cup to showcase American power and prestige. He's got the trophy in the Oval Office more often than not. Infantino created a literal peace prize to honor him. But Trump's own aggressive foreign policy is destroying his signature sporting achievement. His threats against Greenland and tariffs against European allies have created the exact conditions that make a boycott not just possible, but likely. While Europe threatens to walk away, North America's other partners see massive opportunity. The Canada-Mexico Alliance Strategy. Mark Carney is positioning Canada as the stable diplomatic alternative to Trump's chaos, and it's working brilliantly. While Trump burns bridges with European allies, Carney's leveraging his connections with European leaders to create what insiders are calling a safe haven narrative for relocated World Cup matches. This isn't just political theater, folks. FIFA is quietly exploring Plan B scenarios, and those scenarios heavily feature Vancouver, Toronto, Mexico City, and Monterrey as backup venues. The math here is simple. Canada and Mexico were already hosting 26 of the 104 World Cup matches. But if European teams refuse to play on U.S. soil, those countries could absorb the relocated fixtures without breaking a sweat. The infrastructure already exists. Both countries have proven World Cup-ready stadiums and logistics from previous tournaments. Mexico hosted in 1970 and 1986. Canada co-hosted the Women's World Cup just last year. They know how to do this. Mexican officials are leveraging their World Cup experience and anti-Trump sentiment to capture more games, and honestly, they're playing this perfectly. Mexico has never been shy about criticizing Trump's immigration policies and border wall rhetoric. Now, they're positioning themselves as the alternative that European teams can feel good about supporting. It's diplomatic jiu-jitsu at its finest. Use Trump's own hostility against him to steal his tournament. The economic windfall for both countries would be massive. Each World Cup match generates tens of millions in local economic activity. Hotels, restaurants, transportation, merchandise sales. If Canada and Mexico can capture even half of the matches that European teams refuse to play in the U.S., we're talking about billions in additional revenue. Tourism boards in both countries are already quietly preparing marketing campaigns targeting European football fans. But here's the really clever part. Carney's diplomatic channels with European leaders are creating this safe haven narrative that makes the boycott seem reasonable rather than petulant. He's not saying, boycott the U.S. because we hate Trump. He's saying, play your matches in stable, welcoming countries that respect international law and diplomatic norms. It's the same message, but framed in a way that makes European governments look principled rather than vindictive. The logistics actually work in Canada and Mexico's favor. European teams would prefer shorter travel distances anyway. Flying from London to Toronto is easier than flying to Los Angeles. The time zone differences are more manageable. The visa requirements are less complicated. From a purely practical standpoint, relocating European matches to Canada and Mexico makes sense even without the political considerations. FIFA officials are reportedly having emergency meetings about contingency plans, and those meetings keep coming back to the same conclusion. If they lose European participation, the tournament becomes financially unviable. But if they can relocate European matches to Canada and Mexico while keeping the rest of the tournament in the US, they might salvage the commercial relationships that make the World Cup profitable. This creates a fascinating dynamic where Canada and Mexico emerge as the real winners regardless of what happens. If European teams play in the US, Canada and Mexico still host their originally scheduled matches. But if European teams boycott US venues, Canada and Mexico capture additional matches and become the heroes who save the tournament. It's a win-win scenario that Carney and Mexican officials clearly anticipated. The infrastructure capacity is there. Toronto's BMO Field can be expanded. Vancouver's BC Place has hosted major international events. Mexico City's Azteca Stadium is legendary. Monterrey's facilities are world-class. These aren't backup venues scrambling to meet FIFA standards. These are proven football stadiums with decades of experience hosting major tournaments. FIFA's panic and the new World Cup reality. Infantino's Peace Prize for Trump is looking increasingly desperate as his tournament implodes in real time. FIFA caught themselves between appeasing Trump and preventing financial catastrophe from a European exodus, and there's no good option. The organization that claims sports and politics should never mix just awarded a peace prize to a president threatening military action against NATO allies. The hypocrisy is staggering. The 2026 World Cup won't look anything like what was promised to sponsors and broadcasters. Corporate partners signed deals expecting traditional football powerhouses competing in American stadiums packed with passionate fans. Instead, they might get a tournament where the biggest names play in Canada and Mexico, while the US hosts matches between smaller football nations. That's not what Coca-Cola and McDonald's paid premium rates to sponsor. FIFA's financial projections assumed European participation would drive television viewership and merchandise sales. Without Germany, France, England, Spain, and Italy, those projections become fantasy. European broadcasting rights alone represent hundreds of millions in revenue. If European teams aren't playing, European broadcasters won't pay premium rates for coverage rights. But here's what FIFA really fears. This boycott would prove definitively that sports can't be separated from geopolitics, despite their constant claims otherwise. For decades, FIFA has maintained that football transcends politics, that the beautiful game brings the world together regardless of international tensions. A European boycott over Trump's foreign policy would shatter that narrative permanently. The irony is perfect and devastating. Trump's aggressive foreign policy is backfiring spectacularly on his signature sporting achievement. He wanted this World Cup to showcase American strength and global leadership. Instead, his threats against allies are creating the conditions for America's isolation from the world's most popular sporting event. 2026 World Cup is becoming a referendum on Trump's America versus the rest of the world, and Germany just fired the first shot in what could be the biggest sporting boycott in decades. While FIFA panics and Trump's tournament crumbles, Canada and Mexico are positioning themselves to capture the matches and global prestige that America is losing through diplomatic incompetence. Drop a comment if you think European teams will actually follow through on these boycott threats. Hit subscribe for more coverage of how Canada keeps winning while America burns bridges with its closest allies.